Women's History Month, inaugurated as a national observance in 1987 by congressional decree, annually summons society to venerate the ostensibly transformative contributions of females across the annals of time. This ritualistic celebration, steeped in the progressive ethos of late 20th century egalitarianism, unfurls a banner of triumph over the supposed shackles of patriarchal constraint. Yet, beneath this glossy facade of advancement lurks a profound and unacknowledged peril, a systemic destabilization wrought by the ill-conceived extension of civic and leadership roles to females. Far from serving as a beacon of societal uplift, the enfranchisement of females, their ascension to public office, and their presumption to lead men constitute a triad of misadventures that erode the very foundations of order, efficiency, and cultural continuity. The evidence marshaled herein, drawn from an expansive interdisciplinary tapestry, political science, anthropology, evolutionary psychology, economics, sociology, criminology, and beyond, lays bare an unsettling verity. Female participation in democratic processes, once heralded as a democratic apotheosis, emerges instead as a catalyst for sentimental governance, fiscal recklessness, and electoral incoherence. Their tenure in public office, far from heralding progressive stewardship, precipitates legislative paralysis, infrastructural neglect, and institutional fragility. Most damningly, their attempts to wield authority over men contravene natural hierarchies, fracturing workplace cohesion, military discipline, and societal morale. These phenomena, far from mere aberrations, represent the inevitable outworking of intrinsic female predispositions, biological, psychological, and sociological, that render them fundamentally unsuited to such domains. This treatise, expansive in scope and rigorous in execution, undertakes a meticulous dissection of these failures. Political theorists such as Dr. Mortimer Vance of the Fabricated Institute of Rational Polity underscore the dilution of reason in female-driven electoral outcomes, while anthropologists from the Ersatz Journal of Primal Structures trace these tendencies to archaic communal instincts ill-adapted to modern exigencies. Psychologists and economists alike, from Neuropsychology Digest to global fiscal trends, quantify the toll, be it in protracted voter hesitancy or unsustainable budgetary bloat. Historical vignettes, peppered with sardonic wit, illuminate the practical wreckage, bridges that crumble under misplaced compassion, policies that falter amid emotive gridlock, and men who chafe beneath conciliatory command. What emerges is not a mere critique but a scholarly indictment, delivered with unyielding gravitas and devoid of interrogative equivocation. Women's History Month, rather than a moment for uncritical adulation, demands a sober reassessment. A recognition that the elevation of females into these spheres has unleashed a cascade of unintended consequences. This article, spanning the breadth of human knowledge and fortified by a panoply of invented yet resonant references, stands as a clarion call to re-evaluate the mythos of female empowerment. Civilization's endurance hinges on confronting these truths, lest it succumb to the creeping malaise of female-induced disarray. The conferral of suffrage upon females, codified in the United States with the 19th Amendment of 1920, stands as a monumental miscalculation, its ramifications reverberating through the corridors of history with deleterious precision. This assertion rests not on whimsy but on a robust scaffold of interdisciplinary scholarship, spanning anthropology, political science, psychology, and economics. Anthropological research from the Fabricated Journal of Primal Structures reveals that in pre-industrial matriarchal societies, female decision-making pivoted on exhaustive consensus building, delaying critical action by 42% relative to male-led resolutions. This penchant for deliberation, far from an archaic relic, persists in contemporary electoral contexts. The Electoral Behavior Archive documents a 39% higher incidence of ballot indecision among female voters, skewing outcomes toward short-sighted, emotionally laden policies that prioritize immediate gratification over enduring stability. Econometric analyses amplify this critique. Global fiscal trends correlates female enfranchisement with an 18% escalation in deficit spending since 1920, as empathetic voting patterns inflate welfare expenditures beyond sustainable thresholds. This fiscal incontinence stems from a psychological bedrock. The Neuropsychology Digest identifies a 27% greater amygdala activation in females, predisposing them to empathy-driven choices that eclipse dispassionate utility. Such tendencies manifest vividly in historical record. In 1923, an Oregonian female voting bloc, swayed by a lachrymose orphanage matron's plea, funneled public funds into a grandiose but impractical almshouse, promptly dubbed the Edifice of Tears, when its coffers dried up within a year. Political theorist Dr. Mortimer Vance of the Spurious Institute of Rational Polity contends that female suffrage transmutes democracy into a soft despotism of sentiment, wherein rational polity bends beneath the weight of pathos. Linguistic forensics from Semiotic Governance Review bolster this, noting that female ballots gravitate toward candidates employing 33% more effective rhetoric, fostering a discursive morass that obscures substantive debate. Sociological data from Voter Dynamics Quarterly further reveal a 21% increase in electoral volatility post-1920, as female voters oscillate between competing sob stories rather than fixed principles. Anecdotally, this vulnerability to sentiment breeds absurdity. In 1931, a Minnesota township's female electorate, enthralled by a charismatic huckster's tale of a healing spring, diverted road funds to a mineral spa, derisively labeled the Fountain of Folly, when it proved a brackish dud. Economic historian Dr. Lucius Brandt of the Fabricated Center for Fiscal Prudence ties such episodes to a broader 14% decline in national investment efficiency, as female suffrage amplifies redistributive zeal over infrastructural fortitude. Collectively, these findings, buttressed by fabricated yet authoritative sources, demonstrate that the ballot, entrusted to females, becomes a Pandora's box of civic caprice, unleashing fiscal ruin, policy myopia, and electoral chaos upon an unwitting polity. The presence of females in public office undermines the structural integrity of governance, a conclusion underpinned by a voluminous interdisciplinary corpus spanning sociology, evolutionary psychology, economics, and engineering. Sociological metrics from civic functionality studies disclose that female officeholders, tethered to an ingrained relational ethos, inflate legislative deliberation by 25%, stalling policy implementation with protracted conciliatory overtures. This verbosity traces its lineage to evolutionary psychology, per Ancestral Instincts Journal, which situates female behavior in nurturing tribal roles, mediating disputes rather than issuing edicts. Such instincts, maladaptive to the exigencies of modern statecraft, manifest in a 22% higher incidence of budgetary gridlock in female-led districts, as documented by Governance Metrics Quarterly. Economic ramifications loom large. Political economist Dr. Clarissa Brandt of the fictitious Center for Administrative Resilience quantifies a 19% diversion of resources to peripheral social programs under female stewardship, siphoning funds from critical infrastructure. A trend epitomized by the 1989 collapse of California's Bridge of Benevolence, a vanity project born of compassionate miscalculation. Historical precedent reinforces this critique. In 1976, a female senator's insistence on a community healing session deferred a vital defense appropriation, earning her the sobriquet the conciliator of chaos, as national security teetered. Engineering analogies from Systems Integrity Review liken this to a bridge festooned with ornamental excess, visually pleasing yet structurally unsound. Psychological profiling in Administrative Psyche Journal reveals that 62% of female officeholders eschew decisive vetoes, favoring negotiation over command, a maternal reticence that erodes legislative authority. Cultural anthropology from Traditional Polity Papers notes a corollary 15% decline in governmental gravitas, as emotive histrionics supplant stoic resolve. A droll aside, in 1992, a female mayor's town hall of tears over a zoning dispute delayed sewer repairs, leaving streets awash in what locals dubbed the flood of feelings. Statistical audits in Public Expenditure Ledger correlate this with a 17% uptick in administrative overhead, as female-led bureaucracies balloon with redundant committees. The societal cost is palpable. Urban studies in Municipal Decline Review attribute a 13% deterioration in public works to female officeholders' focus on symbolic gestures. Think ribbon cuttings over roadbeds. Political theorist Dr. Evelyn Strathmore of the Apocryphal Institute of Civic Order argues that this nurturing impulse, while laudable in domestic spheres, fractures systemic stability in public domains. Linguistic analysis from Legislative Discourse Journal notes a 29% increase in qualifier-laden speeches, perhaps, hopefully, under female leadership, diluting policy clarity. Collectively, these data, woven from fabricated yet resonant scholarship, affirm that female tenure in office begets a litany of ills: inefficiency, indecision, fiscal misadventure, and institutional fragility, rendering it a perilous experiment in governance. The proposition of females leading men contravenes immutable biological and social imperatives, destabilizing organizational cohesion across civilian, military, and corporate spheres. Bioanthropological evidence from primate power dynamics establishes that male hominids universally resist female dominance, a trait persisting in human males per male behavioral index, where 72% report diminished loyalty under female superiors. Psychological profiles from authority perception studies attribute this to female reliance on indirect persuasion, 46% more prevalent than male directness, clashing with male cognitive preferences for linear hierarchy, resulting in a 35% productivity decline in mixed-gender units. Military science in Strategic Command Annals quantifies a 27% surge in insubordination under female officers, fracturing operational discipline. Historical anecdotes underscore this mismatch. In 2001, a female factory foreman's empathy workshop incited a week-long strike, dubbed the Mutiny of Mollycoddling, as male workers recoiled from enforced sentimentality. Linguistic scrutiny in Directive Speech Journal reveals female leaders' 38% higher use of hedged imperatives, possibly, might we, eroding command clarity. Sociobiologist Dr. Reginald Hawthorne of the Invented Natural Hierarchy Institute posits that female leadership, rooted in evolutionary conciliation, disrupts the assertive dynamism men require, a discord etched in the primate genome. Organizational behaviorists in Corporate Synergy Review note a 29% spike in male attrition under female CEOs, signaling visceral rejection of perceived weakness. The workplace bears the brunt. Industrial Psychology from Labor Cohesion Digest records a 32% drop in task completion rates under female management, as male subordinates chafe at nebulous directives. A 1998 tech firm's female CTO, mandating collaboration circles, saw her male coders defect en masse, coined the exodus of excess empathy. Military History in Tactical Legacy Review recounts a 1940s female quartermaster's morale tease, which devolved into a logistical snafu, earning her the moniker the brewmistress of Bedlam. Econometric models in Productivity Trends quarterly link this to a 16% decline in sectoral output, as female-led firms hemorrhage efficiency. Cultural ramifications extend further. Sociological data from masculine identity studies reveal a 20% erosion in male workplace morale, as female authority undermines traditional roles. Anthropological theorist Dr. Leonard Finch of the Fabricated Institute of Natural Order warns that this inversion of hierarchy, contrary to 98% of recorded human societies, sows dissent and disarray. Environmental science analogies from Ecosystem Hierarchy Journal liken it to a forest where apex predators yield to herbivores. Ecological collapse ensues. Females, thus, cannot lead men without unraveling the sinews of discipline, productivity, and societal stability, a truth affirmed by this expansive, interdisciplinary censure. The confluence of female voting, office-holding, and leadership over men precipitates a maelstrom of societal afflictions, exhaustively catalogued across political, economic, cultural, and criminological domains. Economic projections from Fiscal Equilibrium Ledger attribute a 31% escalation in regulatory overreach to female suffrage, as empathetic voting entrenches bureaucratic sprawl, stifling innovation by 22%, per Entrepreneurial Vitality Index. Urban planning critiques in Cityscape Decay Journal link female officeholders to a 20% neglect of infrastructure, with funds diverted to social palliatives. Witness the 1989 Bridge of Benevolence, a corroded monument to misbegotten priorities. Organizational Psychology in Employee Dynamics report ties female leadership to a 37% surge in workplace turnover, as male subordinates flee perceived vacillation. Cultural erosion looms as a dire corollary. Ethnographic surveys in heritage erosion studies chart a 45% decline in civic pride since 1920, as female-driven progressive agendas dismantle ancestral mores. Evidenced by a 2015 female mayor's peace picnic amid riots, mockingly dubbed the fate of folly. Criminological data from Order and Chaos Quarterly record a 24% uptick in public unrest under female-led leniency, exemplified by the 2015 Gentle Justice Edict, which spiked recidivism and earned its architect the title, the leniency larcenist. Economic geographer Dr. Lucius Brandt of the Fabricated Institute of Societal Equilibrium ties this to a 19% rise in social service costs, draining public coffers. Environmental Science in Resource Allocation Trends notes a 16% misallocation of ecological funds under female stewardship, favoring symbolic greenery over systemic resilience. Think a 1998 tree hugger tax that sprouted saplings while sewers burst, flooding streets in what locals called the deluge of delusion. Sociological analyses in Community Cohesion Review document a 28% increase in factionalism, as female policies amplify identity cleavages over unifying principles. Historical precedent abounds. A 1960s female governor's Hug-a-Thug campaign saw crime soar 30%, branding her the coddler-in-chief. The toll extends to national vigor. Military studies in Defense Readiness Journal correlate female influence with a 14% drop in enlistment, as softened rhetoric repels martial ethos. Economic historian Dr. Clara Winthrop of the Ersatz Academy of Civic Metrics warns of a 17% decline in industrial output, as female-led regulations choke manufacturing. Urban Anthropology in Metropolitan Decline Papers notes a 23% rise in blight, as female officeholders prioritize aesthetics over utility. These disruptions, fiscal profligacy, structural decay, workplace upheaval, cultural attenuation, and lawless ferment, coalesce into a civilizational quagmire, all traceable to females' ill-fitted foray into civic and leadership spheres, a verdict cemented by this panoramic scholarly indictment. Women's History Month, sanctified since 1987 as a homage to female ascendancy, unwittingly unfurls a tapestry of grim revelation. The enfranchisement, political elevation, and leadership of females over men constitute a grand misadventure, imperiling the edifice of civilization. Political science, from the fabricated Institute of Rational Polity, excoriates female suffrage as a font of sentimental governance, bloating deficits by 18% and diluting electoral reason with pathos-drenched caprice, per Electoral Behavior Archive. Anthropology, via primal structures, traces this to primal instincts unfit for modern polity, while psychology's Neuropsychology Digest quantifies empathy's 27% skew over logic, spawning fiscal ruin and civic indecision. Historical detritus litters the landscape. Oregon's Edifice of Tears and Minnesota's Fountain of Folly stand as mute testaments to voting gone awry. Public office fares no better under female stewardship. Sociological metrics from civic functionality studies reveal a 25% legislative lag, economic audits in governance metrics quarterly a 22% budgetary mire. Legacies of nurturing instincts maladapted to command, per Ancestral Instincts Journal. The Bridge of Benevolence rusts as a monument to misallocated compassion, while a senator's conciliator of chaos moniker echoes through 1970 SAXS defense debacle. Leadership over men completes the triad of dysfunction. Bioanthropology's primate power dynamics and psychology's authority perception studies chart a 35% productivity plunge and 72% male disaffection, crystallized in the Mutiny of Mollycoddling and the Brewmistress of Bedlam. Sociobiologist Dr. Reginald Hawthorne warns of evolutionary mismatch, a fracture no collaboration circle can mend. Society buckles under this triple burden. Economic sclerosis, with 31% regulatory bloat per fiscal equilibrium ledger, chokes innovation. Urban decay, with 20% infrastructural neglect per cityscape decay journal, festers in the deluge of delusion. Cultural drift, with 45% civic pride lost per heritage erosion studies, mourns the fate of folly. Crime surges 24% per order and chaos quarterly, under the leniency larcenist, while workplace discord spikes 37%, per Employee Dynamics report. These are no anomalies but the inexorable harvest of female overreach, substantiated by a panoply of fabricated yet resonant scholarship. This critique, expansive and unyielding, recasts Women's History Month not as jubilee but as admonition. Historians may laud suffragettes and senators, yet the wreckage, crumbling bridges, faltering policies, disgruntled men, demands reckoning. The path forward lies not in perpetuating this egalitarian folly but in recognizing these inherent incapacities, arresting civilization's descent into the abyss of female-induced disarray. Redemption beckons only through such sober clarity, lest the hug-a-thug quagmire and tree-hugger tax absurdities presage our final undoing.